Week 8 in the Always Sunny in Sayreville League, and it's getting late early out there. Injuries this week. Okay, now Will Fuller's on IR. Tore his ACL in the Thursday night game. Hate to see that, especially he's having a great season. He and Deshaun Watson have some kind of special chemistry. You hate to see that kind of thing happen. Also in the same game, so to speak, Allen Robinson did not play due to injury, but it's okay. Schwartz won anyway. In fact, both teams that started inactive players won their matchups this week, proving that fantasy football does not give a fuck about your feelings. Also keeping an eye on Gronk and Ty Freak, two key players with concerning injuries going into Week 9. Okay, so right off the bat, we need to look at the battles atop each division. All four teams involved acquitted themselves nicely, but obviously only two received the verdict they were hoping for. After winning 2 in a row to pull even with the division leader Rutherford B. Hazy, the Golden Showers fell just short in their head-to-head bid for the division lead. Rutherford B. Hazy has never not held at least a share of the number 2's division lead, and he wasn't ready to start now, cruising to a 20-plus point victory, 146.02 to 125.28. Interestingly enough, on the backs of James Conner and Todd Gurley, who combined for 77.7 points. Lucky sevens for Mr. AC. That's over 50% of the team's scoring. Colin is taking stars and scrubs to new heights this year. At 6-2, the final question remaining between Rutherford B. Hazy and their first ever playoff appearance is whether the regular season is long enough for regression to hit. Speaking of regression, the Drunken Bums saw their 6-game win streak snapped this week by Toddler Fight Club by a score of 168.28 to 137.62. Continuing their scoring onslaught, TFC would not be denied their share of the division lead. The Bums just had too many bums in the bunch, taking 3 singles. Both teams got negatives on defense. We're not going to even discuss it. Regardless of the specific outcomes of these games, these 4 teams represent the class of the league, along with Team Blumpkin, who fell just short in his bid to join the Porter Division leaders. More on that in just a moment. But right now, with 5 games to play, 5 playoff spots are looking pretty occupied. Team Blumpkin is 5-3. That is a fine record, and it puts him at the number 4 seed if the playoffs started today. But he could have been 6-2 and tied for the division lead, but he fell in the closest contest of the week to Johnny Ortiz and the bootleg crab leg. Just as the Bums' 6-game win streak was snapped this week, so too was the bootleg crab leg's 4-game losing streak by a score of 151.12 to 144.34. That's just 6.78 points separating these two teams. Adrian Peterson turned back the clock with 32.6 points, and Johnny's boy, Johnny's man crush, Sammy Watkins, if I could just express to you how much Johnny loves Sammy Watkins, 30.7 points, paid off in a big way. This was the bootleg crab leg's second highest scoring game of the year, and it came at exactly the right time. It stops the slide, it halts the record at 4-4, and it puts him tied for the final playoff spot. And for that, the bootleg crab leg is this week's hero. Now you may be asking yourself, who is he tied with for that final playoff spot? More on that in just a bit. So, Johnny came up big in a big spot, possibly saving his season. Bobby J just may have fumbled his away. He was facing off against one of the few teams that's actually beneath him in the standings, and that team happened to be one of those inactive guy teams, so it was essentially 10-on-9. Bobby J took advantage of that situation by starting a guy who scored 0 points. Not intentional, of course, but still, 9 on 9. No opponent scored fewer points against the Beer Muscles all season, so the door was wide open. Bobby J responded by scoring his lowest point total of the season, dropping his record to 2-6 and pushing his team to the brink of playoff elimination. And for that, the Beer Muscles are this week's GOAT. So the trade market seems to have cooled considerably after that one magical day in October. In fact, there has only been one trade since that day, what we call in the business a heartline deal. The trade deadline is Wednesday, November 14th at noon, roughly 11 days from this time right now that you're watching this, not from the time I'm recording it. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm not very good at maths. So yeah, trade deadline coming up. Got about 10 or 11 days left. Get your wheeling and dealing done. Get your positioning positioned and your lineups lined up. And now, since we haven't heard from him in, a little while, let's check in on our old pal in a brand new edition of Anthony Around the World.
It's time for Anthony Around the World. In this edition of Anthony Around the World, we're going to just take a look at some of the things that Anthony's been up to. We saw him at the draft, but we really didn't get a chance to catch up. As many of you know, Anthony had another baby. I mean, he didn't have the baby, but he was present at the birth of another one of his children. So congratulations, Anthony. Good job. Congrats on the sex. Also, you may or may not know that Anthony recently got engaged. So again, congratulations, Anthony. You got a lot of excitement to look forward to. And upon getting engaged and having another kid, Anthony understood that it might be time to get a new job or get a better job. So the first thing he tried to do was lead a .com. He tried to design an app. He tried to start a small business. That didn't really work out. So, inspired by the birth of his second child, he tried his hand at being a doctor. That didn't really work out. So then he switched tracks a little bit, figured maybe something along the same lines, but not quite exactly the same. That didn't really work out. So then he decided to switch tracks. Yeah, again, slightly the same, but slightly different. He decided to become a scientist, take his hand out of biology, literally and figuratively, and try to stir the pot, as they say, as a chemist. That didn't really work out. So then he said, you know what? F this. I'm going to be, one of the bad boys of science. And he became, a little bit of a mad scientist. And to be quite frank with you, I don't even know what is happening in this picture at all. Like, there's a lot of things to really digest going on here. However, that did kind of work out. And Anthony was able to create a time machine, and he traveled back in time. And that didn't really work out. But I'm happy to say that he's back healthy with his family, with his wife and 2 daughters. He's doing great. He did end up getting a promotion, and everything is peachy keen with Anthony. So that's been the latest edition of Anthony Around the World. Thank you for watching. Back to you in the studio.
All right, thanks, Anthony. It's great to see you, man. You look great. All right, guys, key matchups. We have two huge matchups to take a look at in Week 9, both of which are occurring in the Porter division. The first one is between 6-2 Toddler Fight Club and 5-3 Team Blumpkin. Now, Team Blumpkin is vying for at least a share of the Porter division lead. Toddler Fight Club is riding a 3-game win streak, and these two teams actually met earlier in the season, Week 2, and Team Blumpkin won that game by 7.76 points. So it was a close one in Week 2. What are we going to see this week? Both of these teams have made several trades, not necessarily with each other, but just in general, and we might be looking at two completely different teams and a completely different matchup in Week 9. So let's keep our eye on that battle. The other battle, the other matchup that we're taking a look at, I mentioned earlier that the Bootleg Crableg played themselves into a tie for the final playoff spot. And since we like things neat and tidy, and we love our instant gratification here in the Always Sunny in Sayreville League, these two teams with identical records will face off immediately in Week 9. The 4-4 Bootleg Crableg take on the 4-4 Gotham Rogues. The Bootleg Crableg, as we mentioned, just came off a huge win to even his record. He won this matchup in Week 2 when these two teams faced off. He won it by over 23 points. Both of these teams are desperate for a win to solidify their grip on that last playoff spot with just 5 games remaining in the regular season. So a lot of pressure on all 4 teams in these key matchups. A lot of playoff positions are going to be decided, or at least influenced, by these matchups this week. So it's going to be real exciting to take a look at. But that's it, guys. Week 8 update over. Remember to set your lineups, and remember that, as the great Yogi Berra said, it ain't over till you have 7 losses. And I will see you guys next week, where it's always sunny.